Hello, everyone. My name is Mirna, and on behalf of the Mindalia TV team, we want to welcome you to Mindalia live streaming, where thousands of people around the world gather to see the lectures and interviews organized by Mindalia TV. Today with us, Angel Rebo, CEO consultant, TV host, international public speaker, and president of the Wisdom for Kids Foundation, is going to be interviewing Judi Glova. Judi has been for over 15 years working with corporate executives and entrepreneurs who are burning out and causing health issues, troubled marriages and sleepless nights, or struggling with being too nice instead of too honest. Without Today, Judi is going to be interviewed about her conference called How to Deal with the Jerk at Work. Before going with them, we want to remind you that Mindalia is a non-profit organization. Our only mission is to share information that can help raise the level of consciousness around the world, and you can help us. How? Subscribing to our channel if you haven't done it yet, leaving us a positive comment down below, or sharing this video with someone that you know that is going to benefit from the content that we're going to be talking here today. Also, while we are live, like right now, we have the tool called the chat. The chat is going to allow you to interact with us, ask your questions. We just ask you to please follow the format, the word question in caps and the actual question that you want answered. At the end of the interview, Judi will be answering. Last but not least, Mindalia TV is direct every weekday streaming live streams through Mindalia TV English, Mindalia Televisao, and Mindalia Televisión in Spanish. So we invite you to go to our different platforms, find out what we are developing there, and you can also collaborate with us with your own valuable content. You just have to go to our website, and at the top of the page, you will find a link that says Collaborate with Mindalia. That link is going to take you to a form that you can fill out, and our technical team will be contacting you. Without further delay, I am going to be leaving you with Angel and Judi. Guys, welcome to Mindalia live streaming. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Mirna, and welcome to Mindalia TV, Judi.
Hi, thank you for having me, Angel. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Our audience couldn't wait to have you here, so welcome. Let's start the conversation with a very easy question, because obviously the title of your presentation is a little bit provocative, if I may say. Can we to start very, very well centered? Let's say, how do we define a jerk at work?
Well, here's the thing. I think most of us, business women and men, we work so hard and we really can make a difference in the world. But the fact of the matter is, we have to deal with people, right, to get jobs done. We don't work alone. And a lot of the times we have conflicts with people at work. Now, what defines a jerk at work is really any time that we're triggered, right? Any time that we have a personality that we call, let me just put in air quotes, difficult, right? Whoever that difficult person is that gives us that trigger on the inside. And generally, it drains us. It drains our energy. It causes us to get off focus. It gets us irritated. We tend to not be as productive when we have to deal with them.
Okay, so now we know what a jerk is. So how, if we were to say from 0 to 100, how much would you say it's due to them and how much is it due to us?
Right. So that's really what the crux of the issue is, right? So when we talk about this problem of, dealing with the jerk at work, I said specifically, it's how it triggers us. It's the impact that their behavior has on us. Now, Eleanor Roosevelt had this amazing quote way back when, and she said that, no one can disturb your peace unless you give them credit or you give them permission. So I'm probably butchering that quote, but that's the essence of what it meant. It's like no one can make you feel something unless you give them permission. So generally that jerk at work, you're giving away your power. You're giving away that, your peace, that inner peace that you have, you're allowing them to do that. Now, again, this is actually unconscious. Because if I'm really talking to you right now, I'm talking to your logical brain. So much of these triggers are in our primal brain, our reptilian brain. They were formed when we were little kids, right? These triggers, these people that annoy us, chances are they probably remind us of people like from our family. You know, do you have brothers and sisters maybe? Yeah. Maybe a few. Okay. I have brothers and sisters. I have two sisters and two brothers. But anyway, growing up, yeah, they created a lot of triggers for me. So when I would think about, the triggers at work, a lot of those times, some of those behaviors were the same ones that I had to deal with growing up. And they get stored in that primal brain. So we're not even conscious that those programs are running. So if you think about it, we're on a computer right now, right? And there's programs that are running behind the scenes that we don't even see. That's the same thing when it comes to these triggers. That jerk at work is like pushing on those buttons to make those programs run that get us upset. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. Absolutely. Absolutely. I was already thinking of, well, as you know, I left the corporate world a few years ago, and you just mentioned that you've worked or you work with people at corporate. So I was thinking, okay, so number one thing that it comes to my mind, is it possible to have them like be drained out of energy before our own energy drains out?
Can we drain them of their energy? So in other words, can we shift so that we're no longer triggered from them, or we're not drained from them? Is that what you mean?
Exactly.
So yeah, so basically what some of the things that I work with, and I'll give you a story actually. I have a client, her name is Vanessa. She's been working with her business partner for about 20 years. They grew this amazing financial consulting business. And, he was the type of person that would just push Vanessa's buttons whenever she would bring up a new idea, right? In the beginning, it was great because he would challenge her. But over 20 years of working together, it really got on her nerves. And she would just shut down, right? So that's how she would deal with, Mark being her jerk at work. So she actually had this experience. So when she and I were working together in coaching, I gave her this opportunity. I said, you know what, Vanessa? I said, would it be possible to actually consider that, some of what Mark is doing is not really the actual activity, but it's triggering something that happened in your past. And she was like, oh my gosh, absolutely. She's like, I used to have, my brother and my father would always interrupt me whenever I talked at the dinner table, and it would always get me really annoyed. So it brought back a lot of memories for her around that whole situation of being interrupted, of not being listened to, of not being heard. So whenever her business partner did it, again, at first, when the business was starting, she was all excited. This is great. He's challenging me. But then it really got to that point of triggering her and draining her energy. So I said to her, I'm like, so how's that working for you? And she's like, yeah, not so much. She's like, it really does make it hard for me to go to work because I have to deal with him every day. And, we're in a type of business where we're coming up with solutions. And if I feel like he's interrupting me and I'm shutting down all the time, we're not serving our clients. Plus, it became one of those things where when she was driving home from work every day, she noticed that her shoulders, like the pain in her shoulders were so bad. It even got to the point where she had chronic neck problems. It's like the pain never went away. She went to chiropractors, she went to healers, she went to all these people, and they couldn't solve the problem. So as she and I were working together in this coaching session, I said, okay, let's try something. Let's actually, think about what are the three things, because there's three hooks that all of us have as humans. So the first one is that we have a story. We tell ourselves a story about the behavior that's happening. So when Mark would be interrupting her, she would automatically go into the story of, oh, if Mark is interrupting me, that means what I have to say doesn't matter, right? We all have stories. We all tell ourselves stories. So that's hook number one. Number two is that we want to change it. We want to change it. We want to fix it. We want to do something about the situation because we're not happy with it, right? Most of the time, we want to live in the moment and live in peace. When we are in that place of being triggered, we are far from being in the moment. We are in the past, or we're thinking about the future, and it totally disrupts us. The third one, this is the real kicker, and most people will probably start nodding, is that we take it personally. We feel like they're doing it to us, right? That it's our fault, that somehow there's something wrong with us or that we're not enough. So when we went through those 3 triggers, she was like, yes, yes, yes. All those 3 hooks, those things, he does all 3. It's like the trifecta. So when we realized that he was hitting her with the trifecta, I said, okay, you know what? We actually really have 2 different ways that, we can work on this. I said, are you game? And she said, absolutely, let's go for it. So the first thing I asked her to do, and it's based on the Sedona method, it's questions. You ask yourself the question and you allow yourself to have the story, have the wanting to change it, as well as having that feeling of it's personal. You actually allow those to be there, and then you ask yourself, could I let this go? Could I let this go? Could I give myself permission to let this go? And her first answer was yes. And then I said, well, if you could, would you let it go? Would you be willing to let it go? And she said, well, yeah. And then the last question was, well, when? And she's like, right now. I'm like, well, great. So she actually started laughing. And in that laughter, it was this amazing release that she had. And the other thing that I did for her is I gave her an example of what letting go was and that release was all about. So if you take a pen, right, and you roll it in your hand, right, this pen represents the feeling. But we wrap it around this, like we suppress our feelings. We hold on to them. We try to just keep them right there, in our grasp. But if we allow that pen to roll back and forth and we give ourselves permission to just let it go, right? That's how we let go of feelings. It's the same way that little kids, like 1 minute they'll be crying and upset, and the next minute you're like, give me a lollipop, I'm so happy, right? So it's the same thing. Little kids know how to let go. They do it naturally. We've actually been taught to hold on. So yeah, I mean, that was one of the amazing breakthroughs that she had, because she realized how she was feeling before and how she was feeling after I put her through those 3 hooks and then asked her those 3 questions. She had such a lighter feeling around that situation.
And that's such an interesting point. When do you think that we as human beings, we go from accepting and letting go easily to being judgmental and taking everything personal? When and how and why does that happen? It's super interesting.
Okay. Right. So the theory is that once we go through the terrible 2s, right, when it's mine, right, little kids start saying mine, we start getting an identity. As soon as we start getting an identity and our parents say, they give us feedback, they correct us in terms of our behavior, we take that personally, like something's wrong with us. Up until 2 years old, we're really not grasping, you and me. Like there's no distinction. We're just one, right? There's all that oneness. And then we get to 2 and everything's mine, yours, mine. And that's when we start owning those feelings. They're my feelings. And we start saying that, I'm angry, right? We don't just say I'm feeling angry. We're taught that, I'm angry. So my beingness is angry. So those are 2 ways that we can think about how we develop that. And it's taught, it's like our parents condition us. I mean, we're all programmed as human beings. 7 billion people on the planet are all programmed to hold on to feelings.
Wow. Okay, so let's say now we are humans. We work in corporate. We are surrounded, by tens or hundreds or even thousands of people. What do you think is the number one need for help that you see every day in the corporate world?
Well, yeah, I mean, when it comes to the jerk at work, it's really being able to manage that that fuse, right? It's when I teach emotional intelligence development, we talk about self-awareness and self-management. So how well are we able to manage our own state? And many of us do a really good job on a day-to-day basis. However, you put us into conflict and we actually have a different personality. Every single one of us, we have our personality, and then we have our personality under conflict. And, you know, there's that classic scenario of flight, fight, or freeze. So all of us have different reactions to conflict. So when the jerk at work happens, we have that reaction. Some of us want to fight back. Other times we freeze. We don't know what to say. We're so blown off course, we don't know what to do. And then there's that, you know, flight. We just want to get the heck out of there. We just want to get away from that person. So one of the main things that I think is so crucial is to really help people understand how to have those crucial conversations when they're in that state, when they've been triggered, and how to manage that. So that is in the moment type of training and being able to work through that. It's the after fact, right? Where I'm really helping people release it so that when it happens again, that trigger goes down, right? So we have our reaction, but how can we minimize how often we're triggered and really be able to let it go? But I have to tell you, there's one more step to this, and it's a different kind of process. And you may have heard about it, but it's called radical self-forgiveness. So when we can forgive ourselves for what's going on, a lot of times when we get into conflict with someone, we're blaming ourselves, right? Because we're programmed to think that there are feelings and it's our fault, right? Because we take it personally. So if we think it's our fault, we judge ourselves like, oh, I should have known better, or I'm not enough, or this person is doing this to me. So we judge ourselves and we draw those conclusions. So if we can actually forgive ourselves for all those judgments, and it sounds something like this, right? I forgive myself for judging myself as not saying the right thing, or I forgive myself for judging myself as being wrong, or I forgive myself for judging myself as, not being able to figure it out. So it's really just being able to forgive ourselves. And here's the thing. I have another quick story that I want to tell you. I was actually, I trained for the Center for Creative Leadership. Okay. I do leadership training around the world. They fly me all around the world. I get to meet amazing leaders, corporate leaders. And I was training this one program. And this participant was so triggered by something I had asked him during the class, because he was really caught off guard. And I asked him a question, he wasn't paying attention, and his reaction was so strong. Like, even everybody else in the room was like, whoa, what's going on with that? And I really took it personally. And what was interesting is that after that day, and he never said anything, he actually was really in a really bad mood, like the whole rest of the week. And it was because of the feedback that I had given him. But what was interesting is I just went inside to myself and I gave myself forgiveness, because I felt so bad. I'm like, oh my God, here I am. I triggered this participant. It was in front of the entire class. I feel like a jerk, right? I felt like the jerk. So I forgave myself for judging myself as handling the situation wrong. I forgave myself for triggering him, like somehow it was my fault. Don't you know, the very last day of the program, he came up to me, and this was after I had done it for like several days in a row. I just kept on forgiving myself and forgiving myself. I'd go out on a walk and I would just, continuously, I forgive myself for judging myself as not being enough. I forgive myself for judging myself as disrupting this man's peace, whatever it was. And what happened on the Friday was that he came up to me and said, you know what, Judi, I really have to apologize. He's like, you know what? You said something to me that my wife has been giving me feedback about for ages, and we had a fight about it the other day. He's like, and you just brought it up to the surface. He's like, you gave me feedback about how I was showing up in the class, and she always says to me, I'm never present. I'm never in the moment. I'm never like there in the room. And I was like, wow. So the magic though, and this is like the spiritual healing, right? When we really think about what's going on here in the greater universe, we're all connected, right? When I was able to release the judgment I had on myself, that's when the forgiveness happened. That's when the healing took place. He and I had this amazing conversation. It was so magical. So we can know things about the three hooks. We can know, asking ourselves those questions. Could I let this go? Would I let this go? When? But when we really solidify it with radical self-forgiveness, it just really energetically, it's just a beautiful healing experience. It's amazing.
Well, okay, so let's bring all this a little bit down to practice, if that's okay with you.
Sure, absolutely. I want to make it practical.
Exactly. So let's try to help someone that, he just came, or he or she just came back from work, and they know that tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. or 9 a.m., kaboom, there's going to be someone there that's going to push their buttons, and, they're going to be right there in that conflict zone. So
Yep.
is there any recipe, any formula that you would be able to share with them so tomorrow they could start changing their lives forever?
Absolutely. So the best thing that they can do is go through the steps that I've just talked about. And the first thing is to journal for like 10 minutes. What's the story? What's the story that you're telling yourself about this person, right? Write it out for 10 minutes. I call it free-form writing. You put it down on paper. As soon as that's done,
so they can do that tonight? They can do that now, tonight, when they watch this video? Okay, awesome.
If you're watching right now, take out a pen and pad, put a timer on for 10 minutes, and just journal for 10 minutes, specifically what the story is. What are all the judgments, the conclusions? It's kind of like taking a file cabinet and opening it up and saying, what are all the stories in there? What are all the judgments I have in there about myself and about that other person? And just write them all down. Get them all down on a piece of paper, rip it up, and like after the 10 minutes, rip it up, wash your hands, and then come back. And then just sit quietly and think to yourself, what are the wants? What is something that I'm wanting to be different? Am I wanting it? Am I wanting to push it away, or am I wanting to hold it close? So you just ask yourself that question. What do I want to do with it? Do I want to hold it? Do I want to push it away? Do I want to figure it out? And then can I let go of that? Can I let go of having to change it, having it to be different, or to anticipate that it's going to happen again? And then the third step is to notice. Can you actually sit and say, am I taking this personally? Yeah, okay. And just accept that you're taking it personally. From that point, you can ask yourself those three questions. Could I let this go? Would I let this go? And when? And when you're asking yourself those three questions, you're not asking your mind. You're actually asking your heart, right? Because if you're asking your mind, your ego is always going to say no, 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 no. Or it'll just tell you what it wants you, or it'll tell you what it thinks you want to hear, right? So really being able to ask from your heart, could I let this go? Would I let this go? When? And then go in, put your hands over your heart and go into forgiveness. I forgive myself for judging myself as it being personal, right? That could be the first thing that you forgive yourself for. I forgive myself for wanting to change it. I forgive myself for having a story about it, right? And just keep going through. And eventually, you'll just start to feel like, even as I'm doing it right now, like I can literally feel like an opening and a more spaciousness in my beingness. Just asking myself, could I let it go? Would I let it go? When? Really helps open it up. And honestly, the next morning, even at 9 o'clock when you walk into the office, you can literally just be standing there looking at that person and saying, can I forgive myself for judging myself as, this being wrong? Or can I forgive myself for believing that this somehow is separate from me? Because so many times we think, oh, it's the other person. Can we let go of the illusion that there's an us and them? Right?
So it's funny because we tend to think exactly. I was just thinking the same thing. It's like we are giving ourselves the permission to forgive ourselves, but should we not? Does that not increase? Sorry about the question, but does that not increase like our level of guilt?
Well, actually, if you ask the question, that's a really good key distinction here. If you judge if you can forgive yourself for judging yourself as, not for. Okay, so if I was to say I forgive myself for judging myself for being wrong, then I'm judging myself. If I forgive myself for judging myself as being wrong, as believing that I'm wrong, then you're actually forgiving yourself for the belief. You just had a belief. It's not about you, right? So when you make it personal, again, about yourself, you are judging, you are creating more guilt. But when you're actually forgiving yourself for having a belief, it's just that belief, and it's all those beliefs that keep us separate.
All right, so here we come. As you said, we walked into the office, and that person is really close, really close. He or she is about to open their mouth, and they say something.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference is that we are kind of going to be on a level of self-control. Is that kind of the situation? Is kind of the feeling that we're going to be feeling?
Well, actually, if you do this experience the night before, I think if anything, it's an amazing opportunity to be and notice what the reaction is. I can tell you, honestly, I've heard it a million times, and I've also experienced it so many times. It decreases, even if it's a little bit. The trigger goes down, and when you have that awareness that it's coming from you and that you're giving that person more permission, that too enables you to own your power and own your power to choose, right? So many times as human, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, right? So there is that spiritual aspect that we're always connected, but there's that humanness that we have to deal with. And it's that other human that we have to deal with too. But the only human that we can change and that we have any true power with is ourselves. It's hard enough for us to change ourselves, right? I mean, have you tried to change a habit? It's hard. It's impossible if we think we're going to change somebody else. So it all starts with us. And the other thing that I would say too is when it comes to leadership is an inside job. Right? For all of our business leaders out there, all of our people in business, you're a leader. Whether or not you have the title of leader, you're a leader. As you show up, you have inner leadership as how you run your life. You are the CEO of your life. So when you actually own that you have that job, you're that CEO, you have to work on your inner leadership. How am I working on myself? And how am I letting go of all the stuff that's getting in my way? Because chances are all that conflict and all of that triggering that's happening, it's getting in your way. So as you said, if people are doing, if you listening are actually doing this exercise the night before, you're really owning your power and you're really able to embrace the fact that you can shift that energy just by remembering the truth of who you are. The truth of who you are is that it's not, that feeling isn't you. Feelings aren't facts. So a lot of times when we get triggered, we believe that feeling is a fact. That story is 100% true. So being able to do the exercise the night before and even the morning of just really centers us in the moment, and it helps us just get into that place of knowing that we're doing the best we can, and it's just a feeling. It's not the truth of who we are.
So it's clear to me that you have to do your homework. My question then is, could you try to rehearse this with someone at home, like with your partner, with your kids, with your parents? Is that something that you can rehearse so you feel more comfortable when you are in the real world again, back in the following morning?
Right. So here's the thing. But I'm actually gonna attach it to rehearsing in a different way. With that process that I gave you about asking, like, could you notice that there's a story? Have somebody ask you those questions. Can you notice that there's a story and go through it that way instead of writing it down? Someone can actually help you release the energy, the trigger that's underneath it. Can you notice the story? Can you notice how you want to change it, fix it, or make it different? Can you notice how you're taking it personally? And the could you let it go? Would you let it go? And when? Those 6 questions. If someone else can ask those questions to you, but we've also realized that if you ask those questions to someone else, you're still releasing. So how you can help someone else in your family release their jerk at work or something that's triggering them, it actually increases an energy of healing, and it's an atmosphere of healing. So again, it comes back to being self-referenced instead of other reference. The biggest habit we have is that we think our trigger, the reason, is outside of us. When we really can own our true self, the truth of who we are, that's when those triggers can happen and we'll be what we call hootless, right? We won't give a hoot. So if we do our homework and work on releasing all of that tension, you know what just came to me? It's that that quote by Rumi. Rumi's, and again, I may not get this quote exactly right, but he says, you know, yours is not to seek love, but to find everything that's in love's way, right? To look at all the barriers that are between you and the other person. So if you think about how your homework is decreasing all those barriers that you have between yourself and having a loving experience with that other person, because if you're not feeling love, you're in fear. So conflict and the jerk at work, the bottom line is it's driven by our fear of conflict, of taking things personally, or that we're not enough. I know it's kind of turning it on its head a little bit, but that's truly how it heals.
No, I was thinking that this is so powerful, Judi. It's so powerful. But I was also thinking, would it be possible, would it be a fair comment, according to your experience, Judi, to say that we actually have a story about almost everybody in our lives, but maybe there's some stories that we allow and other stories that we really don't and can't? And would that make sense at all?
Yes, that's kind of like the pen, right? So, you know, there's research that says, let's just say we have 800,000 thoughts a day. There's usually 3 thoughts that we hold on to, right? We hold on to it like I'm gripping this pen, and they ruminate and they go around and around in our brain. That's when you get triggered by that jerk at work. That's that jerk, right? And you're holding on to it. So there are stories that we hold on to. So how can we learn to let them go? So this whole process of letting go is what's going to heal the jerk at work. It's not the jerk that's going to change. It's us being able to let go of those stories that we keep on holding on to because we get used to it. We learn how to just like hold on and not let go.
So let's fast forward a little bit. Okay, so we've done the homework, we've gone to work, and we start feeling that things are changing, right? Things are changing. So according to your experience, what are those emotions? What are those feelings that people start when they start to realize that that this conflict is kind of vanishing? What are the feelings that the people externalize to you? What do they tell you?
So basically, actually, I'll give you a quote because I actually have a quote from one of my clients.
Nice, thank you.
She basically said, this is Vanessa, and yeah, she basically said that the good news is that she's already started to break free from this, and instead of feeling like she always has to prove herself by talking it out through him and trying to change his mind, she's like, now I just know what's best for me. Now I just do the way that really makes me feel good, and I don't have to make him wrong. So, I mean, this is literally what Vanessa had emailed me after, you know, she had this amazing breakthrough. She's like, Judi, I no longer feel this tension. I no longer feel like I have to go into battle. It's not a push and pull anymore. It just kind of lets go. You know, there's more freedom in that relationship now.
Mm-hmm. So do you mostly work with corporates? Do you mostly work with corporate clients?
Corporate clients, I work with entrepreneurs, I work with middle managers. Yeah, so it's not just executives, but I mean, I love working with people in business because it's like we can change the world through our jobs. Like, some of our jobs, we really do make such a huge difference. And I think it's so important to be able to not just, you're helping leaders, and leaders impact the rest of the team, right? And then the energy of the team impacts the rest of the organization. So yeah, that's why I love to work with leaders and with people who are managing other people, because gosh, they have some really tough jobs.
Where would you like to take your business from where it is today? Where to? What's that place that you would like to take your business to?
Yeah. So what's really interesting is that this particular topic about the jerk at work is like the surface of what causes us to get burned out, right? So I'm launching next week, October 15th. I am launching the Burnout Solution Series. So everybody, if you're, as you're listening to this, if you really want to break free from a lot of the burnout and the stress that you're feeling, this is a no-brainer. It's absolutely free. You can watch them at your leisure because they're all pre-recorded, but it's a series of over 20 experts that I've identified throughout, around the world that are going to be speaking about different aspects of burnout, so you can create your own burnout solution. And it's really easy. You just go to burnoutsolutionseries.com. You sign up and it gets right into your email box. And it's, again, it's amazing information to help you take a deeper dive into being able to let go of all that stuff that, whether it's at work or, in your personal life, like what are those things that are draining your battery, right? What are ways that, maybe you have a leaky bucket, maybe you have leaky boundaries. You can't say no. A lot of people struggle with, like you were asking me at the top of the hour about like, what are those main issues? The jerk at work is usually number one. Number two is not being able to say no and not having boundaries. Number three is being overwhelmed and overloaded, right? And then also blaming themselves, blaming other people, like just feeling not enough. So that's why I'm so passionate about helping people have their own burnout solution, because so much of this, we can learn different ways of being able to have these solutions for ourselves.
Why do you think this is so much needed? Where does this burnout come from, Judi?
Yeah, gosh, I think it really stems from our digital life, right? We're on so many hours of the day, and let's just say a typical executive has 2 cell phones, has to deal with 3 time zones, has probably 2 or 3 email accounts, 2.1 kids, and it's like you have all these things and you have all these things to manage, and we feel like we have no choice. Like we just feel so stuck sometimes. And a lot of that burnout comes from us just forgetting that we have the power to choose. We forget that power. So this amazing series that I've put together with all these really exciting experts, they just help us remember how to find those solutions for ourselves in all those different areas of our lives.
Outstanding. Before we go to the questions, would you mind reminding us where can we find Judi online? How can we reach out to you? How can we have a conversation with you, please?
Absolutely. So judiglova.com, Judi Glova, Glova.com. That's where I am. That's where I live. I'm also on Facebook. But yeah, that's basically how you find me. But if they sign up for the Burnout Solution Series, they'll be on my email list, and they'll be able to get information, nicely in their email box on a weekly basis. So
excellent
information.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so let's go to the first question. Number 1, can you share an advice, excuse me, on how to deal with cultural differences at work?
Okay, so gosh, I guess let me think of a story. So Okay, so actually, I have a client who's working in Germany, and she's actually from oh gosh, where was she from? Oh, she was originally from Costa Rica. So she went over to Germany to do a lot of IT work. And what was so interesting is, I mean, Germans tend to be very much on time, right? And having to deal with her having a different experience of time. Like, she would always get her work done, but she tended to be pressure prompted. And she said, well, that's how I grew up, right? We just, time is different. We have a much more relaxed kind of attitude towards time, whereas the Germans, her German boss was very punctual. So in that instance, her being able to have a real conversation of what she was able to see was the issue. So she had a conversation and said, you know what, I really welcome your feedback. She's like, what is it that I'm doing? So she opened up the conversation to find out behaviorally, what was it that was really a challenge for him. And then she said, well, can I share some of the challenges that I have being in this culture, because I'm so used to dealing with time in a different way. And I feel like my value is always to give the best outcome that I can, the best work product. But, they were really like sandpaper and the sunburn. So really opening up the conversation of being able to mutually understand each other, like what was really triggering him, what was the story he was telling himself about her, and being able to let him know that it really wasn't personal.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question. How to break the ice with our coworkers when we are just starting at the new job?
So one of the things that, and actually we just did this in a leadership program this past week. One of the things that's really great when you're the new kid on the block, right? You have a lot of license because you're the new kid on the block. So you actually can reach out to people one-on-one and find out, like, what is their role and what do they think your role is? Because you're going to find out two different things. You're going to get educated on their role. They're going to appreciate it. They're going to feel really connected and acknowledged that they're bringing something to the table. And you'll be able to get a sense as to what is their expectation of your role. That's also really important, because that's where conflicts happen, when it's like, this is my job and this is what you think my job is. And sometimes that can open up a really nice conversation of like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that you assumed that would be part of my role. That's not my understanding, but let's see, how we can make things work. So I think that being the new kid on the block is an amazing opportunity. And if you're that person, seize it. Definitely build those relationships. And people really appreciate. And I just can't say enough that connection is currency. And what I mean by that is not necessarily money, but connection, meaning making those connections early on in your career with somebody. It's going to pay dividends later. It's going to make your job easier. You're going to be able to go to those people and say, hey, can I have a favor? Because you're going to have, deposited in the bank account of that relationship, that business relationship. So yeah, to that point, connection is currency. Invest in having one-on-one time with people. And when you're the new kid on the block, take that opportunity and don't waste it. Yeah, the first 3 months, you've got new kid on the block, gifts.
Excellent. I love that piece of advice. I wish I had done that myself. Thank you. What a great piece of advice. A new kid on the block is a great thing to do. Thank you. Next question. What is the difference between feeling guilty and assuming responsibility for what happens around us?
Great question. So guilt is when we think it's something personal that we've done wrong, that we're judging ourselves. That's a conclusion that we've made about ourselves, that we've done something wrong. However, when we're taking responsibility, we are saying, I committed to do something, and I didn't follow through. And the good news is that, you know, you can make adjustments, right? But when you make it personal about yourself and you make yourself wrong, that's guilt. When you take responsibility and you own it to fix it, you know, that's responsibility.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question. Can kids also practice this at school? How old should they be to be able to process all these concepts?
Oh my gosh. Wow. As soon as they can understand the concepts and as soon as you can ask them those questions, actually those 3 questions that I mentioned before, the could you let it go, would you let it go, when, you could actually ask them those questions, yes, when they're little, because again, they are born not having that program of holding on to things. So the sooner that you teach them those 3 questions, could you let it go, would you let it go, when, they can give themselves permission to let things go. And then the forgiveness, oh my gosh, forgiveness, you can start that as young as possible. I think, you know, being able to forgive ourselves and let ourselves off the hook for being human, I think you can start that at any time. Yeah. Excellent.
Thank you. And the last question, what is the best advice you can give to that person that resists and rejects the drama-free environment at the office?
So they reject the drama-free. So they're the ones that actually want the drama.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do with them? I would have to say, first, I would seek first to understand, like, what is it about, you know, what is it about the drama that's present for them? Like, I think until you have that question answered, there's not a whole lot you can do with it. But I would first, you know, probably ask them the question of, you know, what about that drama is so, I don't know, gratifying? I don't know if that's the right word, but I think, yeah, first you have to seek first to understand, because there's probably a lot of layers to that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Where I would start.
Excellent. Thank you. I mean, it's been an amazing conversation. I really enjoyed it. As you know, I also, you know, I come from corporate and I work with corporate, and definitely this is a blind spot. I mean, if we could help, you know, millions of people in corporate to have a better life and to be able to earn that currency of connection every single day, oh my God, it would be like such a wealthy world. So, I mean,
yeah. And being able to let go of all of that tension opens up an opportunity for us to be more productive, make more money. I mean, I've seen people that have used this the letting go technique and the forgiveness. They make more money because they're just not bogged down with all that negativity, and they're opening up to free space, and they can clear think, and they're just more happier people, quite frankly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Again, could you remind the audience of Mindalia TV, where can we find Judi Glova?
Oh, yes. So you can find me at judiglova.com. And I would love to invite all of you who really want to break that cycle of overcommitment, burnout, and blame to the Burnout Solution series.com. So I look forward to seeing you there. We start October 15th.
Amazing. Excellent. So thank you. It's been a pleasure, Judi, to have you among us today. Thank you very much in the name of the team here at Mindalia TV and in the name of the audience of Mindalia TV. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you again. This is Angel Rebo with Mindalia TV. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today, and hope to see you soon. Goodbye.